Uh, Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity you've given us this evening to gather together and not only hear from your word, but also then be able to talk about how we can better share that good news of what you have done for us with those that we come into contact with in our life. Bless our study this evening. Through it, not only nourish and strengthen our faith, but continue to work in us a zeal and a confidence to be witnesses of your truth and good neighbors as we share the gospel with others. We ask these things in your name. Amen. All right, I'm probably also, since you have the handouts, or you should, so let me back up. All the handouts are on the group webpage, which if you need, I'll try to remember to send out an email to everybody. That way, if you need to, you can download them. I'm pretty sure they're all there already. So if you ever want to work ahead or download them all and print them all at once and just have them, they should all be online there. So like next week when we're in person too, I'm not sure how much I'm going to actually use a screen because you already have all the questions. I might try to, if there's something that needs to be illustrated, for example, like next week, one of the things, if you're reading ahead, he talks about a bridge in Mexico. So I can like pull up a picture of that bridge or something, so you guys can actually see what have a visual of what he's talking about. But I probably won't use the screen a whole lot. But since we are online this evening, and I am using the screen a little bit, I thought we could ask or answer the question: if you could live anywhere, where would it be?
Right here.
I am exactly where I want to be.
I am exactly where I want to be.
Well, that's great. That's not.
Is that uncommon?
That is, yeah, I was going to say that. I would be curious how often that would happen where someone would say, I'm exactly where I want to live.
I feel like you should pick people to go.
No, well, see, I'm kind of curious what Stan's going to say at this point, because unless he says right where I am, how does that go over with Carol then?
I want to live wherever you don't have to call ahead to get a tea time. Ooh. And all the courses are flat.
I like this.
So it's more of an idea than a place.
No, it isn't. It's a pipe dream.
The pipe dream, yeah.
Gotcha.
Marcus, you got one?
I like living down in the south.
All right.
I like South Dakota. I would live in South Dakota if I got to pick up the spot.
Okay.
I kind of want to live in Washington. I think it'd be cool because I like the rain a lot.
Interesting thing. Washington is not even one of the wettest states in the United States.
Really?
Yeah. We looked it up one night at dinner because I think Emily had read something, and then we started looking up, and a lot of the wettest states, like three out of the top 5 or something like that. It was might even been higher than that. Out of the top 10, were in the southwest, southeast.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Wettest city in the United States with a population of over 100,000 is Mobile, Alabama. 66 inches a year.
Oh. Maybe I'll move to the rainforest then. I'm changing my answer.
Oh man. And so
That would be fun living.
that's interesting that nobody went. I mean, Stan went with a pipe dream, and nobody else went with anything exotic necessarily. I thought, Fiji.
Nothing tropical.
Nothing tropical, yeah.
Not even tempted. Give me mountains and water.
Yeah. So. All right, let's jump into the here. No, we're gonna do this. Yeah. All right, so I'm I'm reading through a book with Roger right now. And so I went through one lesson with him last week, and that was the first time I've ever done this. So technically this is the second time I've done this, but we're going to count it as the first as well, because with Roger, it's just the two of us. So usually when I read a book like this, what I end up doing is I'll highlight and I'll take like little notes or things like that. So if in the future there are things that as you read, you're like, oh, that was interesting, or want to highlight, and that's what we can talk about. Because what I'll probably end up doing is just walking through and saying, hey, these are the things that I found interesting. Did you have any? And then we can kind of jump into the questions a bit. So as you read chapter 1, the whole point was just to kind of set the premise that Jesus is out in the world working, and that he invites us to kind of go with him as he is working in the world. So on page 21, the first thing I had highlighted was that, I guess you could call it the last full paragraph, just about how the US has become one of the largest mission fields on the planet. The odds are very good that right now, wherever you live in the US, the people in your neighborhood and workplace are largely unconnected to a local congregation and may not be connected to Jesus at all. We're no longer a church who is servicing a community filled with a variety of Christians. We are now a church who finds itself needing to be on a mission in a mission field. That kind of actually thought about it a bit more. I was talking to my father-in-law when I had to call to South Dakota, and he had said, well, you know, it might not be as many mission opportunities up here as there are in the South. And I said, as I was talking with him, I asked him how many people he thought in Watertown, South Dakota went to church on a average Sunday or on a Sunday over the course of a month. And so I figured 5,000 people might be, you know, it's a town of 23,000. So let's say 20,000, keep the math easy. So I figured he thought that was a reasonable or realistic number. So I said, you know, 3 out of 4 people then aren't churched, roughly. Even in the South, like the highest churched areas are probably like 30%, 33%. So 2 out of 3 then. So you can just start to think if you know, kind of those averages hold up, you know, I think you could probably use it 2 out of every 3 houses or have people that don't go to church regularly, don't have a church, aren't connected to a church. So it's not as though, you know, even in one of the more highly churched parts of our nation, there are still plenty of people that need to hear need to hear about Jesus. You guys feel free to just jump in if there's stuff. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking, because turns out I'm relatively good at talking. At least I think so. I don't know how it is listening to me, but on page 22, the last sentence of the paragraph that kind of starts the page, most churches and churchgoers continue to think and operate as if the US culture is still essentially churched and looking for a churched home, and they aren't. Which at least just gets me thinking, okay, how do we do that as a church? How do we assume, if our assumptions are wrong, how do we not only change our assumptions, but how does that then change how we act? And I think this is part of it, right? Of maybe changing the mindset of, instead of having some congregational or changing a congregational outreach from looking at, okay, we're going to do Christmas and Easter and things, but instead saying, okay, if our people are going to be the best missionaries we have, how do we as a church think differently about that, so that we give the people that are in the church the best opportunities to talk to the people that are in their life or that they're in contact with? And so, you know, just how does that change how we do outreach on a bigger level? I don't know.
Yeah, because that's kind of what I want. Like, I think, like, I definitely am like, oh yeah, I think that's true. I think that the culture has changed, and the way that we look at mission work, or the way that we look at evangelism maybe hasn't. But then I was like, so I wonder what things at our church, like, are there things that we're doing that are making the assumption that people are looking for a church? Like, I think that's a good general statement, but then I was like, I wonder, like, what are like actual things from our church that are like that old culture or mindset, I guess.
I guess I'd part in thinking that I wonder how much of it is culture and how much of it is actual things. Like, do people view the church as this is, talking to people about Jesus is the pastor's job and the church's job, or people that are outgoing and extroverted. And if I'm not, that's not my job then.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's the church's job, but it's not my job to be.
Okay. So maybe like the old mindset is the church can do outreach and that's enough to bring people into church. And that what now we have to switch to the everyday missionary. I mean, it's a good thing to switch to that. Not like, oh, well, I guess we have to, but we need to make more of a shift to say all of us making connections with people is a much better way to evangelize to people who don't even realize that they are missing something. That
Yeah,
that makes sense.
could be. I guess the one thing that I know I've told other people, and just like the 5 of you will be a better missionary in our area than I ever will. Simply because people will look at me and say that is my job. Like, you are talking to me about Jesus because that's what your church pays you to do. For you guys to do that is different for the most part. I mean, I might have a few friends that I could do that with and they wouldn't see it as me doing my job. But for you to talk to people about it says, well, you care about them, because you don't have to talk about that with them. You can talk about a million other things. But to see that as, as a, if I see myself as a missionary in my neighborhood, and he defines kind of neighborhood as, okay, anybody that I'm, the group of people that I have regular access to. If I see myself as a missionary to those people, that's different.
There's another reason. There's
Yeah.
5 of us and 1 of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if there were 10 times us, meaning 50, it's
Yep.
kind of simple math.
Yep.
Well,
And
and we also have Stan has different activities that he does from me.
Mhm.
And different, we are all in different neighborhoods.
Yep.
So we're going to make a lot of different connections that you alone could not.
Yep. Shoot, I had another thought and it's gone. Yeah. I don't remember. Maybe it'll come back. The other thing I just highlighted was at the bottom of the page there. It just says missional living is simply living each day as if it were a mission trip. So as I go through each day, it's kind of neat. I'm a missionary. Every day I get to talk to people and have come into contact with people, and I view my life now as a mission, an ongoing mission trip, because I live in a mission field, which is kind of I think a different way to approach things in life, of seeing, that this is part of who I am as a child of God, not something I have to do.
Well, instead of going to Guatemala,
Mhm.
and working with people there, doing, whatever, you just go to the store and start. It's a lot easier. Maybe not as much fun. Maybe people don't really see it so much as a mission trip, because people come back with these awesome stories that you don't come back with on a daily basis.
Yeah, but I think, See, I think that the same can be true here even, right? Because like if you like just see how excited people are when they invite somebody to church and they come. Right? Not that they necessarily even, yeah, like, oh, like this actually works. You know what I mean? Like, to be able to talk to somebody, whether you're talking to them about, specific about Jesus or just inviting them to church or whatever. And yeah, when they show interest and they're asking good questions, and then they come to church, and that's can be, in my opinion, just as exciting as going to some other place that I don't know, that I'm there for a week or two and then I leave. And you get to see some neat stuff, but I think there can be some really neat stuff here that I don't think people necessarily think about, because I don't think they necessarily would think of, okay, here as a mission field.
Well, I mean, think about it. Well, most people, if you gave them the choice, would you rather go to Peru on a mission trip for 2 weeks, or would you rather go to Inslee?
Yeah.
But guess what? Chances are there are just on a per capita contiguous basis, there's probably just as many unchurched people in that 2-week trip to Inslee as there is because if you go to Bolivia, you're not going to have an SUV, you're going to have a llama or something like that, and you're going to be in a very small confined area and very small, but the chance of the matter is it doesn't matter what languages or anything else. It's,
Yeah.
It's God's
or
work.
Or just 2 weeks in Chelsea. You don't even have to go to Inslee.
Right. I think that's what, so reading this chapter, I mean, not that I hadn't thought of it before, but that mindset of that you're just doing your normal things. Like you go to the grocery store and visit with the little girl in the checkout, and you know what I mean? And then, you see her again when you go next time. I think just that those things, you're not going anywhere. You're just staying at home, but just realizing that those relationships that you build over the course of your day, just doing your normal routine, that those relationships are important. And that's a good way to share your faith, is just through those just daily connections you make wherever you are.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say before. I was reading and talking with, reading a book and talking with another pastor about it, but how he thinks the next kind of thing for evangelism is going to be like hospitality evangelism, and he touches on this a bit in the book as well, if you get later on, of just being hospitable and friendly to people, and maybe inviting them to your house for a meal, or inviting them, to, like our neighbor does, he'll do like mini block parties for Super Bowl. And so or for Halloween, and we'll, 6, 8, 10 families will get together at the house, and we all bring something to eat and do stuff. And, having those more informal gatherings where you're going to be able to talk to people in a way that isn't threatening. And again, if there are things relationships that you're nurturing, now you're creating opportunities for those discussions to go deeper, or to bring up things that, okay, I have a relationship with this person now, and I can feel comfortable talking to them about other things. But you want to jump to chapter 2 quick, because that's all I had highlighted in chapter 1.
I thought we were only supposed to read chapter
Yeah.
1.
Me too.
It was lesson 1, chapters 1 and 2.
Right, see if you
Lesson 2 is actually a typo, because it's chapters 2 through 6. So we're going to do
What?
2 must be important, because we're going to do it twice.
twice. Yep. I
I
thought it was
see.
2, and he actually has it on. If you look in the discussion guide at the end of the book, he has 2 twice, because I thought the same thing. I'm like, why would we do 2 twice?
Man,
Important.
all these questions on the discussion guide, even we can answer with just chapter 1. So
Yep.
I feel like we can engage in the discussion still.
I think I would encourage you to just start talking, and we'll give you funny faces if all of a sudden you're saying something that's weird.
I'll read the
Wait,
here's
I
the
have to
point.
figure out how to do that.
So at least on the page 27, so the first page, the only thing I had highlighted just, excuse me, is that this the definition for a neighborhood. So, any network of people to which we have regular access to. And even on the handout, you see he's got some definitions just there to kind of help keep, okay, when we're talking about these things, this is what he's talking about, which I think is helpful. I didn't have anything in the next 2 pages. On page 30, I highlighted kind of the main.
Getting back to discussion point 1.
Sure.
One
Wanna go
thing
through that
that
one first?
one thing I liked about this book is that, and I never thought of it like this, is Jesus is already out there doing it.
Yep.
He is creating the circumstances, and we're just showing up and doing our small part, but it's not me walking up to people and talking to them. It's almost like, Carol, you have been put in this place at this time. The prep has been done. So that's really encouraging. Because it's not on me.
Yeah. So I'll just ask the question as it is. What intrigues you about that?
I never considered that.
Yeah.
I know that God is all powerful and almighty, but for him to be working in the Checkers life, so that when you happen to say something, they're at a point where they're willing to respond to you.
Yeah.
Or maybe they are setting up, maybe he is setting up the circumstances, all types of circumstances, political climate, family relationships, where things you know nothing about, and you're just there and it just clicks, and you're just going, it's a relief. It's actually a big relief to me to know that it's not me going in cold.
Yep. That was one of the points I threw down for number 1 too. There's a lot less pressure because it's not on me. That Jesus is the one doing the work. I don't have to feel pressured to, I've got to talk to this person, or what if if I don't, just to be able to go, okay, Jesus is working and he's going to put me in these right spots so that I have those opportunities that he's already working on. And I think, so I wish Alonzo was here because he has I was talking to him, it was last week, and I'm like, so how in the world did you ever, because he walks in last Sunday, or a week ago Sunday now, and he said, I have a million questions. I said, great, it's 3 minutes before church starts. I can start answering them after church if that works for you. So he said, oh yeah, that's fine. And I said, so what, how did you end up here? And so he's going to Highlands, he's from Savannah, Georgia. He's going to Highlands College. He thought when he first applied there and was accepted that it was just a regular college, that it wasn't connected to the Church of the Highlands at all. Gets there and then kind of figures out, okay, this is what it is, and goes through some stuff and is hearing stuff that he doesn't think is quite right. And so he's reading, he's reading the Bible kind of as he goes along. He heard some stuff in some sermons where, as he looked at the context, said, that ain't right. And so then started looking on YouTube and found this YouTube channel called The Messed Up Church. And the guy on the YouTube channel will take mega church preachers and but other things that and break them down and point out how things are false and not right. And so then he reached out to him and said, okay, this is where I'm at. Where should I go? And he said, Our Savior Lutheran Church. That was my reaction too, Carol. Like, wait, what?
You're famous.
said, so he reached out to the guy, and this is what the guy who makes the videos said. And so he said, and just go there and just tell him you have a million questions. So he walks in literally, and the first words out of his mouth are, I've got a million questions.
How
So
many of them did you get through?
not a million,
Did you get through 1,000 at least?
maybe 100. Even if we knock them out 100 at a time, that'll probably be enough for me right now.
Jesus loves you.
So we talk through a whole bunch of stuff, and I give him some stuff, and set up a time where we met last Friday. And so he leaves, and then I go, and I'm like, I'm really curious about this YouTube channel. Like, who in the world is telling people to come to our church? Like, so it turns out he is a Wells guy, a Wells layman in McFarland, Wisconsin, which is like a suburb of Madison. And I think it's he and his wife just.
And their dog.
And their dogs.
Yeah.
It's awesome. You guys should watch them.
Just like, and so I'm, in my mind, I'm thinking this through, going, so this guy recognizes something is wrong. He happens to search on YouTube to watch something else, finds this guy, reaches out to that guy who tells him to come to our church because it happens to be a Wells layman who does videos about false teachers. So he walked in. Like, that's like same thing, Carol. Like, we just go, so there's all these things going around all around me where God's just maneuvering things, right? And how often I don't even think of that. And just, yeah, some of the neat opportunities now that, yeah, it's kind of neat now to think of it in a much different way.
Well, so this kind of goes along with that point. We don't talk about it in that way. We talk about, well, Jesus tells us, go and tell, like, you have to go do this. And which he does, but I think that we don't often put that together, that he is also at work in the world, that God's kingdom is being spread. We always talk about, here's what you have to do, which is very intimidating. So I think having a different mindset is helpful.
Yeah.
And
So
I think
Carol,
it's cool to think about
ahead.
your relationship with Jesus, just that you're working with him. Because I think that's something that people don't think about enough too, that Jesus like is our friend and like our brother, and that like he's just like with us. He's not like this like upheld, that we're not allowed to like, we get to work with him.
Yeah. So would that also come, Carol, as the answer for number 2? The what was the one aha moment you had as you read the first chapters?
That Jesus is very well aware of what's going on in the world today.
Yep.
He knows what's going on. I never thought of it that way. So I felt very connected at that point.
Anybody else have a aha moment as you read the first chapter, something that kind of struck you?
I think one that we've already discussed, just that I think I work under the assumption that people are looking for a church when they're probably not looking for a church. I know I read an article, and it was actually about people who consider themselves churched, and it said, like, ask people, are you a regular churchgoer? And they'd say yes. And they'd say, how many times a week, a month, a year, how many times do you go to church? And they'd be like 3 to 4 times a year. And they considered themselves regular churchgoers. And I was like, that's crazy. You are not a regular churchgoer. And it kind of made me realize, like, people like so what I would think is I'd say that you are not a church member. Like, you go 3 or 4 times a year, you're not a member of a church. Like, but they think they are. And it kind of made me realize I don't know where people are coming from, really. Like I think I kind of need to change the way I think about people, because I'm like, I don't really understand where they're coming from. And so I'd say the same thing in this chapter. Like, they're not even looking for a church, or, so how do I reach out to them when I don't really get where they're coming from?
Did you have something you wanted to add, Hannah? You were smiling there.
No, Celia was just making a weird face at me. Sorry.
Sounds about normal. Yeah, I think the one thing that struck me that I think I've probably heard before, but probably haven't considered quite as much as I have since reading the book, just that to flip the idea on its head of, we are living in a mission field, that I shouldn't necessarily think of a mission field as someplace else that we have to go to, but instead just to look around and go, there are more than enough people here to keep us busy for a long time. And I need to start thinking of the place where I live as my mission field, not, well, the mission fields are in Africa or China, that I have just as rich a field here that I can be working without having to think it's somebody, that I need to go someplace else to do it. I want to jump to number 3. How has Jesus been messing with you lately? What is he inviting you to notice, believe, or wrestle with?
I think one for me would be like when I feel like this year, especially, I've been like, man, like I am just so thankful that my like friends and family are like so forgiving, because I just like mess up all the time. Like I'm mean to my friends, or I don't reach out to them as much as I should, or all these things. And so like I think me struggling with that, like feeling bad about it and stuff, like, okay, well, like for one thing, I'm forgiven, but also like all of my friends and family also just keep on forgiving me. So like I should really make sure that I'm doing that too then. Like I should make sure that I forgive all of my friends and family right away. If anything ever wrong is done against me, I should also be forgiving them in the same way that they're forgiving me, and just like still being there for me and stuff. So I think that's one that made me notice, I guess, how forgiving they are.
Anybody else? You'll notice a bunch of these questions kind of overlap. So like partly I think you start thinking about the aha moments, or thinking of like number 1 of, okay, thinking of this whole thing differently. And I would say in some ways that's Jesus messing with us a little bit too. Just as I am forced to start thinking about this differently, I'm going to start seeing things differently, just in life and how I do things. Number 4, what did you learn about being an everyday missionary?
It's not extremely hard. Like, you don't have to like systematically plan out something. It's just sort of see where it takes you.
Okay.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
It starts with the first step. I know that's so cliche. I'm old.
Well, I think it forces you to, it's a process, not a product.
Yep.
So, and it just kind of, it's an attitudinal thing. So
Yeah.
smile at that checker, smile at everyone, because guess what? You I mean, sometimes you walk into a public place. I have a good life, but there are people who are dealing with illness and just relational problems. And you know what? That smile is just,
Mhm.
could be just a positive thing in their life. And you
They
don't
don't-
even know it.
Yeah,
And they don't have a doting, loving husband.
that's,
That ought to make them laugh.
yeah, it's in, so I usually try to get gas at the same place. And so, you end up seeing the same people at the counter. And like one told me, that was probably 2 months ago, that she had just broken a bunch of her ribs, but was, she was still working. And so a week later, whenever I went back to go get gas again, it gave me something to talk to her about now. Like, hey, how are your ribs doing? Or like, and she said, oh, a lot better. Thanks for asking. And, stuff like that. And yeah, like it does. And I had just started reading it, which is, okay, at least for me, I'm like, oh, I guess I got to maybe try putting this into practice a let's see if it works. But
Just something as simple as remembering somebody's first name.
Yeah.
When you say hi to them, instead of saying hi, saying, hi, Marcus. Hi, Emily. Hi, Pastor.
there, turns out I do that in my family stand, and they're excited if I say the right name.
And
Yeah.
look them in the eye, look
Yep.
them in the face and say it with conviction.
Yeah, I think there's a saying, like, there's nothing sweeter to a person than hearing their own name.
The sound of their own name.
The sound of their own name. Yeah. Did you have any questions about the definitions? Oh, I know, before we jump to that one. So one of the things, and I think you had mentioned it a little bit, Carol, just that attitudinal aspect. You'll see a lot of these, you'll see things in every chapter and even in the discussion guides of reviewing things and going back, because I think like changing an attitude is hard, because it's not something where I can just go, okay, I've learned something and I'm just going to automatically apply it. Because the way I've heard it described one way is kind of like a footpath in a forest, that if everybody's been walking, if you've been walking on this footpath for years, it's all in one spot, you know where you're going, you can walk it in your sleep. And so if all of a sudden I've decided I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to change my attitude about this, you have to create a brand new footpath. And your brain naturally is going to want to go back to the one that it's used to. And so, it just takes a lot of effort. And so you're going to see it both in the chapters and kind of our discussion a little bit, and especially at the end, kind of as we do this, or, start practicing these things a bit more, of kind of just constantly reinforcing those same things over and over, because your habit is going to be to go back to what you're used to, what you've been doing, instead of going, oh, this is new and this is where I want to do it. And so, having to constantly or start working on just using that footpath more. Now, any definitions you still have questions about? And if not, we can just jump to the last one there. What is Jesus inviting you to do as a result of today's discussion?
Get off the couch. Do something. Carpe diem, seize the moment.
Okay.
I mean, I guess, but also the other stuff that we've already kind of talked about, just start viewing your everyday tasks and interactions as opportunities for evangelism. And just that recognition that you don't really have to change that much about what you're doing to make it evangelism.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things, as you read ahead, you'll see, he just encourages being friends with people. And I think one of the ways he describes it is just having a curiosity about them, which enables, I think, having a curiosity about them kind of builds the relationship, because if you're curious about something, you're going to be asking questions, which means, if you're asking questions of someone and they are talking, that's probably something most people don't do, because most people like to just, they'll like it because they'll get to talk about themselves, but it's also probably not something that most people do. To have someone come and ask about, they're ready to tell you, I'm ready to tell things about myself, but for me to come and ask somebody about that and want to actually listen to them is much different than I think most people's experiences. Any other thoughts, questions, ideas that you want to talk about?
No, just a comment. It's, we live in interesting times. There's lots of, this, event down in Texas today is just, I'm stunned. It's just, I can't, I don't understand that. I'm not sure I want to understand it. But people, there's just so much going on in the world. And I'm not talking about Ukraine or, any of this stuff. I'm just stuff in the world about, getting your kids educated, just trying to be a grandparent, all this stuff that you think about. There's just, you gotta believe that somewhere in that people some people are going to start to realize that some of that stuff is nothing more than really clutter, and that there are answers to not your questions, but what you're looking for isn't material. It isn't $3.50 gas, like you feel like you really got something sweet today or anything like that, but there's something that you can rely on that is going to always be there, that that doesn't change.
Yeah.
And you just think at the end of the day, when all of this stuff happens, Carol and I talk about this a lot. She said it earlier today, God's in charge and he's in control, and I'm just going to leave it up to him. And because there's just craziness in the world, and it's almost like, I want to. I've been watching a lot of hockey lately on TV because I don't want to watch anything else. I want to check out from all the garbage, the stuff that's going on. But unfortunately, when hockey's over, it's still going to be there.
Yep.
Well, and getting back to what happened like today in Texas, and there's, we have no answer for what happened, but the people, those 14 families, 15, I guess, you just pray that they knew Christ.
Mm-hmm.
In case there's some solace in that, and maybe if you have the attitude where you're thinking, maybe it's not for this moment, but who knows what people are going to be facing in their futures. And if they can rely on their salvation, it doesn't make it easier, but maybe it brings them some peace.
Yeah.
Right. And I think kind of tying it back to this book, so people that have gone through a difficult thing like that, So if you have a connection with somebody, so right, maybe those people don't have faith, but maybe they had a connection to somebody who, had shown them kindness that they're, and happened to mention they go to church. And I think it's those like kind of, I don't know, not a close relationship, but you want them to have like as many people to have that a connection with you that say they were going through something hard like that. They knew, hey, this is somebody I could talk to about this. Like, because that, right, everybody's going to go through hard things.
Yeah.
Hopefully not that hard.
Why don't we close with prayer and then we'll call it a night. Heavenly Father, we again have seen today the effects of sin and evil in the world. We ask that you would be with all the families that are grieving this evening as a result of the shooting in Texas. Be with them and help them to see the comfort and consolation that you bring, especially in difficult times like they are experiencing right now. Continue to be with us this week. Guard and protect us from the evil that exists in the world around us, and the evil that you do permit to come in, and trouble that you do permit to come into our life. Help us to hold on to those promises that you give us, that you will use those things ultimately for our good. Be with us now as we go out into the world. Help us to continue to foster and build up that idea that we are missionaries in your world, so that we can be confident in sharing and talking to people about who you are and all that you have done for us. We ask these things in your name. Amen.